Today we're building a Class 73-9. Sort of. Do you hear that? If you do hear that, no, it's not the sound of a Class 37 in my neighborhood. It is in fact my generator because I don't have any power. Well, it looks like I have power. I'm running a generator currently just to keep the lights on and record this video, so you're welcome. But if you don't hear that, I should probably edit this bit out. Hey guys, welcome back to Proper Chuffed. My name's Hilton and I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. The Scottish Highlands are notoriously known for their distinct lack of electricity. And no, I don't mean the stuff that powers houses, I mean the stuff on the rails. Recently, I acquired a beautiful rake of Caledonian Sleeper Mark V's from my good friend Bill. I also acquired a Class 92 in Caledonian Sleeper livery from Accurascale, both of which are absolutely fantastic. However, the reality is, well, 92s don't run on the West Highlands. Instead, these services are often carried out by either a Class 66, but more often Class 73-9s when they're, actually operational, which is not very often it seems. Often found double-heading the Caledonian Sleeper on the West Highlands and all the way to Inverness, 73-9s are something of an enigma. Based on the original Class 73 electrics, which run in the south, 73-9s have been slightly adapted to run diesel in the Highlands. And I just happened to bump into one of these when I was at Speen Bridge last year. They look absolutely magnificent, and no offense to the southern versions, the straight old 73s, but the 73-9s really do have their own sort of presence. And the thing is, if I want to run my Accurascale Mark V's authentically up here on Dunroman, well, I need a 73-9. So no one makes a 73-9, despite the fact that there were actually plans for Accurascale to be making one a couple of years ago in partnership with the model railway store. However, this never came to fruition, and the reality is anyone who wants a 73-9 has to do that custom work themselves. So if you're looking for a 73-9, reality is you're probably going to have to make one. And that's where this week's video comes in. So there are a couple of options available to you on the market, but the one I went with was obviously the one I found on RM Web, which has quickly become a very good resource for me. A chap by the name of Andy, known as LMS Fan on RM Web, has created his very own 73-9 conversion kit. And I reached out to him a couple of months ago and said, hey mate, you got any more of those in stock? Andy was quick to reply and sorted me out for a 73-9 conversion kit. So this is a 3D printed kit. It's essentially the main section of the body, which is the main differentiator between the 73 and the 73-9. This includes a different fan location, exhaust ports, and all kinds of different vents all over the body. In theory, quite simple, right? All you need to do is buy a Dapol 73 and cut the cab ends off, slap them on the sides, and Bob's your uncle, you're good to go. Little did I know this was going to be a lot more involved than I realized. Now, I'm not much of a kit basher. In fact, it's something that I've never attempted in model railways. My background is model aircraft. And so in theory, some of the main principles like gluing and fixing mistakes should come into play here. However, you'll see that this was far from an easy process for me. And I'm certainly not entirely happy with the results, but overall, it's not too bad, to be honest with you. So let me show you how I built this Class 73-9, and when we're done, we'll take a closer look at some of these details that Andy has put together to make this happen. Before we go any further, if you're new to the channel and you enjoy this content, please consider subscribing. That would be a great help. And if you're one of my returning viewers, welcome back guys, it's good to see you again. And quickly, before we jump into it, I just want to say that you can do this conversion using a Hornby 73 or the newer Dapol 73. I would probably recommend you do it with the Dapol 73 if you can spare the cash. I don't think they're that much more expensive, especially on the secondhand market. They've got a fair bit more detail than the Hornby models. And to be honest with you, as you'll see, the Hornby chassis really is quite outdated and mine struggles a fair bit. Anyways, let's go take a look at how to build a 73-9, sort of. Look at me, so naive and eager. Right before I torch anything important, here's the plan. I've got a Hornby Class 73 chassis and motor, plus a Dapol 73 body. Andy was kind enough to chuck in the newer Dapol tooling into my order. Cheers, Andy. The idea is simple. Hornby underframe and motor for the mechanicals, Dapol cab for the looks. and the 3D printed diesel body in the middle. We did a dry test fit, and yes, it sits on the Hornby chassis nicely. Small victory. First job, strip the Dapol cab ends of their add-ons. I removed the plugs, fitted parts, and the handrails, popping everything into a labeled container so it doesn't disappear into the void. Learned that the hard way once. One crucial note here, do not be like me and forget to remove the window glazing before you start sawing. Huge mistake. Remove your glazing first. Trust me, and I realize you're probably going to be rolling your eyes thinking, of course you need to remove the glazing, Hilton, you idiot. But I am me, and I have no idea what I'm doing. Next up is separating the cab from the rest of the body. Measure carefully and mark a straight cut line. I aim for about 3 millimeters behind the cab door. That little gap gives you a bit more breathing room to sand and straighten the edge if it gets a bit messy. Then it's down to a handheld rotary tool and the kind of steady hand I will pretend I have. Cab separated, and in my infinite wisdom I reach for the Mr. Masking Sole to protect the glazing, because it still hasn't clicked that I could just, remove the glazing entirely. Smart bloke. Anyway, with the glazing now pointlessly masked, I move on to sanding down the front of the cabs to get rid of the cast headlight mount. At the time I thought I'd done a perfectly respectable job, but you'll see later on just how optimistic that assessment was. Great start so far. Next, I need to carefully remove a section of the cab roof so it can marry up with the 3D printed body. You're only taking out about 5 millimeters here. Nothing too dramatic. Well, nothing too dramatic for someone with steady hands. So, not me. Once the roof section is trimmed and sanded to give a clean, flat fit, I glue the cab onto the 3D printed body using super glue. I remove the plugs, fitted parts, and the handrails, popping everything into a labeled container so it doesn't disappear into the void. Now, as expected, there are a few gaps where my cutting, shall we say, expressed some creative individuality. To fill these in, I reach for the Tamiya filler. This stuff is absolutely brilliant, an absolute must-have for any modeler using plastics. It smooths over gaps, fixes ugly seams, and generally hides all the evidence of your earlier bad decisions. Perfect for me, really. Now we're getting somewhere. I add the truck-style headlights from Andy's kit onto the front of the body. They look brilliant already, and then take the whole thing outside for a coat of Citadel's Rathbone primer. It's a lovely, even base coat, and it should give the rest of the paintwork something decent to bite onto. Once that's dry, I move on to drilling out the headlights so we can eventually fit the LEDs. In theory, this is simple. In practice, well, let's just say the drill bit and I did not see eye to eye. After a few questionable attempts, I abandoned dignity and moved on to the hot needle method, a real classic. I heat up a needle with a lighter, melt a tiny pilot hole through the plastic, then go back in with the drill to clean it up. Chaotic, but surprisingly effective. And for the sake of a timeline, here's the current state of the Brazilian Grand Prix qualifying at this point in the build. Spoiler, it's going better than this drilling attempt. Now, onto the cab ends, and the first of many spectacular missteps in this area. I did not use Sam's pink primer method. In theory, it's simple. Hit the yellow area with pink first so the warning yellow actually really pops. I marched straight in with warning yellow like an absolute hero. Unsurprisingly, it needed several coats just to look half decent. And even then, the ugly sanding job I'd done earlier began to really shine through under the paint. Glorious. Exactly what you want. All your previous mistakes highlighted in warning yellow. I wasn't happy, shocker, so I went back to sanding it, hit it with PVA to clean it up, and brushed away everything I could. At this point, I could actually feel my blood pressure creeping up. Still, I soldier on, pretending everything is fine and absolutely not questioning my life choices. While I'm in the mood for pain, I make sure to paint up the snowplows too. If nothing else, at least they behaved. With the yellow cab ends masked up, it's time to move on to the body. Thankfully, this part is fairly straightforward. The Caledonian Sleeper 73-9s are basically just a deep teal all over. On Andy's suggestion, I grab a pot of Citadel's Incubi Darkness, or Incubi Darkness, and straight out of the bottle, it's an almost spot-on match. I thin it down, build up a few layers, and before long I've got a rich, even finish that looks the part without any drama. A rare moment of calm in this build. Then it's time to sort out the roof for the mesh fan. To do that, I sacrifice our tea strainer. Annie doesn't know this happened, and well, I guess she does now, because she's probably watching this with her jaw on the floor and a look that could melt lead. Sorry love, I'll buy you another one. An upgraded one even. The best. Needs must, and my silly little project apparently cannot wait. I sincerely hope that was not a family heirloom. I cut the mesh to size and glue it in place. In hindsight, I should have done this before painting anything, but here we are. From there, I shift the focus to the roof. I mask off various raised sections and give them a coat of Vallejo's flat grey. Fresh from the factory, this tone is about right, but it'll all get weathered down later anyways. Then comes the best part, peeling away the masking. Always satisfying, and always a little bit of a gamble. Happy? Shocker. So I went back to sanding it, hit it with PVA to clean it up, and brushed away everything I could. At this point, I could actually feel my blood pressure creeping up. Still, I soldier on, pretending everything is fine and absolutely not questioning my life choices. Once that's done, I turn to hand painting the exhaust area and a couple smaller details around the body. Then disaster strikes. I try to hand paint the warning stripes on the roof, and it goes horribly wrong. Absolutely awful. After a quick chat with Sam from Emperor's Path, sanity prevails. I mask off the line instead and paint it properly. This goes far, far better and results in a wonderfully satisfying masking tape peel. Only a little bit of bleed, easily cleaned up with a bit more of that Incubi darkness. Incubi darkness. Whatever. Now for the fun bit, the decals. This superb sheet from Rainbow Railways includes enough to do 2 locos, which is perfect if you want a practice run, or, if you're me, a safety net. Luckily, years of building models paid off and I only needed the one go. I use AK's Decal Fix to help everything bed down nicely. It's basically a water-based PVA that keeps decals from lifting or bubbling. I must say, the decals themselves are fantastic, crisply cut and very, very forgiving. Off camera, I paint the headlight covers and use a touch of crystal clear to create the glass effect before attaching them to the cab ends. I also give the rather old Hornby bogies a fresh lick of paint to help bring them closer to the prototype. They're not perfect, but they'll definitely do. I'm now fairly happy with this model. Not overly proud, but moderately content, which for me is basically the same thing as a triumph. To give it a bit of life and to preempt the inevitable comment about my locomotives looking far too clean, yes, I know, don't worry, I'll get to weathering everything in time. I go in with a black wash over the whole body.
Then I add some finer brown lining on the lower edges to mimic built-up grime and finish it off with some weathering powders to bring out the diesel soot across the roof. Suddenly it all starts looking a little bit more like something that's actually hauled trains and not just posed for glamour shots. I attach the snowplows and then start detailing one end of the engine with piping, wiring and cabling that more or less resembles the prototype. Not perfect, but believable enough that no one can really complain unless they're standing super close to it. Finally, it's time for a small service and a helping hand with the electrics. I am absolutely not an expert on wiring, so I call in the big guns, my Dutch uncle, who arrives armed with an encyclopedic knowledge of circuitry and the ability to make LEDs behave. He wires up the lighting while I stand there pretending to be useful. I also install Hornby's HM7000 for sound, and thanks to the cavernous interior of the Hornby chassis, I'm able to squeeze in a surprisingly beefy speaker. And with that all done, I call it good. A 73.9 that survived my questionable decisions, a few panic moments, and a healthy dose of self-inflicted chaos. But in the end, I don't know, kind of looks the part.
All that being said, I'm pretty damn sure somebody's gonna make a 73.9 very soon, and I hope they do. While this was good fun, I'd much rather a ready-to-run version. Okay, so admittedly, this didn't go as I planned. Over the past couple days of testing and trying to record this loco, at least the motor, slowly started dying. And frankly, no matter how many times I opened it up, cleaned it out, tried to get it back up and running, it just got worse and worse. So believe me when I say that it ran okay initially, and it's just sort of deteriorated. So while I don't have the exciting parts to show you of running, I've got these lovely stills of it just sitting on a siding. The reality is, if I want to continue this 73.9 journey, it's not going to be on this Hornby chassis. It's going to be on the newer Dapol chassis. I think that really is the crux of all my problems, besides the fact that it's not a perfect representation of a 73.9 with all of its sort of shortcomings. I'm somewhat happy with the weathering job that I've done on it, and I've done my best to hide some of my mistakes with said weathering job. This really was a first for me, and to be honest with you, thoroughly enjoyed the process, even if the end result is a sleeper that basically can't run. I think I've produced a fairly good representation of the 73.9. It's really not as difficult as it may seem, although I think I made it look a lot harder than it is. There's definite learnings here. I could improve on a lot of things going forward, and I hope that if you're going to attempt this yourself, I've outlined those things so that you might not make the same mistakes that I did. One thing is for sure, pay close attention to the cab ends, and please remove your glass. Overall, 10 out of 10 to Andy on the 3D body kit conversion. I think it's a really fantastic and fairly easy to use piece of kit. I'll definitely be picking up another one, and you can grab one here too, and I'll drop Andy's email just below. So if you want to get in touch with him and grab your own one, I think he charges about £100 for the kit, so you're welcome to drop him a line and order one of your own. A big thanks again, Andy, for your help with this and for getting it to me really safely and in one piece. I've thoroughly enjoyed this project. The 73.9 will be back, I promise, and hopefully on a much more stable and reliable chassis. So what do you think of the final result? Not too bad, right? Like, I did okay, right? It's not perfect, and I think there's a lot of things I would do differently if I were to make another one, which I probably will, because often they're double heading, so it makes sense to build another 73.9. The reality is the Hornby chassis and motor is very outdated and a very poor performer. Despite having done a bit of a service to it, it really lacks for pulling power, and 4 Mark V coaches from the scale really are a major struggle for it. I can't really even get up a 1% grade. So while it looks nice, just, you know, running around on the lower sections, getting up the hill's a bit of a problem, which is, you know, far from ideal. I think I'm gonna look out for a used 73 model from Dapol and see if that does the trick. I'm sure it will, to be honest with you, because the tech is a lot newer and it probably will pull a lot better. And then I'll be able to just pop off the body from this one, slap it onto the chassis of the Dapol one, and we should be good to go. But I do want to make another one down the line. As I said, they double head very often and it just makes sense to do that. I'm not really happy with the cab ends. As you saw, I painted and repainted and sanded down and repainted them several times. And to be honest with you, the final result just really isn't super great. I'm not mad about it, and I've tried to cover it up with a little bit of weathering, but I know it's there even if you can see it from a distance. It's not great. We have a saying in Afrikaans here in South Africa, mooi van ver, maar ver van mooi, which roughly translates to pretty from far, but far from pretty. And that really is the state of my little 73.9. Regardless, a really fun little project and something I enjoyed doing. It was, you know, something a little bit different from the current state of things with building this layout, and it provided a nice sort of headspace break from layout building, which I think we all need sometimes. I'd love to know what you think about it. Have you built your own 73.9 before, and how did it turn out? I'd love to see some of your examples, and if you have some tips, I'd love to hear them too, because I could certainly use them for the next time round. As always, I just want to thank my Westies. Your ongoing support means the absolute world to me. So a huge thank you to the following members of my West Highlands Supporters Club. That's Annie, Mystic Brick, Simon Thompson, Bill from 3B Rail, Jersey Bill, Tony from Choberton Junction, Derek L, James from the Little Western, Rob from the Kiln Line, Dan from Pedantic Mongrels Railway Channel, Clagfest, Valleys 5600, Sam from Empress Path, Johnny from the 62C Workbench, Phil from PN Trains, Steve Room, Zach from 71D Productions, Joachim Bengston, Scott Wood, Rod Petherick, Hogsmeade Branch Line, Tim Krinsky, Rob's Rails, Jonathan Regazzoni, Ratmat RC, Dylan and Lydia Somerville, Aaron Douglas, Kraus Rails, Luke Jackson, Tim, Matt Poncini, Martin, St. Blazy Model World, and a new member, Hamish Mack. And we'll be chatting a little bit more about Hamish at some point in the future. Welcome to the Westie Club, Hamish. Hope you enjoy your stay. That is all I have for you this week. Thank you so much for joining me on my interesting little side quest to create a 73.9. I really do appreciate you watching. Until I see you next time, keep your engines fired, and of course, stay on track. All the best. Come on. Come on. Pull. Pull, you bastard.